the needs relating to our businesses in order to comply in the new environment. We'll also hear in the next few months about the new opportunities that arise in new markets. We've rolled over a number of agreements, and we will no doubt be shaping other agreements across the world. So this is a very important topic. There's no doubt that there are businesses out there, particularly bearing in mind as we move out of the COVID pandemic situation, that would want to really look at new markets, think about trading overseas, and might think that this is a tough time to do it, bearing in mind so many changes in such a short time. But I would suggest it's the perfect time to do it. And hopefully this session will set you on your way. We've got a wonderful panel of specialists today. There's no doubt that they will be able to keep your attention, and therefore I think I will be very much in the background and enjoy listening about your needs, looking for your solutions, and getting the specialist advice. I will be on the chat. I'll be providing you with details about a number of things, including activities and events that we'll be organising over the coming few weeks and months. We're being supported by Solent LEP in this programme. This is the start of it. We'll be doing another one of these events in March as well, so you'll be able to have another chance to learn and explore the issues that you're facing. And in between, we'll be providing you with a number of webinars and also further small events activities, and indeed one-to-one advice, much of which is going to be coming from members of the panel that we have here. So it's a really good program over the next couple of months. We hope that you benefit from it, and this is the start. Importantly, Chamber Solutions is all about you. It's your panel, it's your opportunity, it's your community of practice. Share with each other, learn from the panel, and hopefully take some solutions back to the place of work. Very much looking forward to it, and thank you for attending. Back to you, Rob.
Thank you, Ross. Now we turn to introductions. Rob Lewis, I'm one of the directors of Mission Performance Limited. We're a business based in Lyon, Solent. We've been trading for 20 years. We deliver specialist training development locally and globally. We help people to lead, coach, communicate, and to de-risk their operations. And we do that across all channels. The panel, I'm going to introduce you to Linda Middleton-Jones. Linda, would you please provide an introduction?
Good morning, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here today. Thank you both Ross and Rob for inviting me to be part of the panel. Just a little bit about me and about my company. I've got over 20 years experience in international commerce across manufacturing, nuclear and aviation sectors from my base in Southwest England. I currently hold the position of Managing Director of International Trade Matters Limited, and I'm also the Chairman of the Academic Board at the Institute of Export. My company, International Trade Matters, offers international trade consultancy across sectors, geographies and disciplines. We are a leading independent consultancy for international trade, offering export advice and support to companies engaged or interested in overseas connections or business. With a raft of qualified and experienced specialists, we offer advice on new markets, regulatory compliance, and international marketing strategies. We deliver the British Chamber of Commerce BCC accredited international trade trading through several chambers of commerce and work closely with international lawyers on specific international projects. We have been consulted by HM Government to advise on the international prospects for the southwest of England and invited to attend a meeting between UK and American diplomats with regards to a free trade agreement between our two countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Extensive background and huge experience. Ziggy, may I turn to you, please? You're on mute, Ziggy. I'm sorry to...
Thank you, Bob. Hi, everyone. My name is Ziggy Burhanu. I'm a UK immigration solicitor with a company, JMA, HR and Legal. My main area of practice is immigration law, UK inbound. Currently, my practice specializes in advising and assisting individuals and businesses on UK immigration law requirements regarding residence and work in the UK. And just touching on that point, the UK immigration rules have undergone significant changes in light of the departure of the UK from the EU. This basically because of the end of free movement of people, EU nationals needing a work visa in order to work in the UK has brought about significant changes. And this is the topic I'll be covering during today's seminar and when there are opportunities to ask questions.
Thank you, Ziggy. Extensive experience on the import side of the equation. And I have some questions for Ziggy. Charlotte, would you please introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody, and thank you for inviting me to be on the panel today. I'm looking forward to hearing how everybody's moved on since the first session around Brexit, so pre and post. I'm an employment lawyer with Womble Bond Dickinson. We're a transatlantic law firm, but we have a specific interest in businesses closer to home. I personally specialise in more transactional work and advisory work. Brexit was seen as bringing change to employment law, but I don't think we're going to see a massive change straight away. The UK has agreed that it can deviate from EU employment law, but that it will protect the fundamental employment rights of employees so that we're all working on a level playing field. And failure to maintain that level playing field could result in trade tariffs being imposed on the UK. And therefore, there is an anticipation that the tribunals will continue to follow EU law and that the government will be less inclined to change employment law for the time being. But it is a definite watch this space. And the positive is that it's business as usual from an employment perspective. And therefore, at least in this area, things aren't changing too much whilst everybody gets used to everything else that is changing.
Thank you, Charlotte. So we'll turn to Stuart. Please, Stuart, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good morning, and thank you, Rob and Ross, for inviting me to take part in the panel today. My name is Stuart Lyle. I'm a senior tax partner at BDO. BDO is a global accountancy firm we have 90,000 people across the globe in 160 countries. In the UK, we have 6,000 people, and that sounds like an awful lot of accountants, doesn't it? In one place, 6,000. That sounds pretty boring, doesn't it? But we have specialists in all sorts of areas, from auditing, tax and accounting through to supply chain consulting, etc. My day job is a corporate tax partner, advising clients on corporate structures across the world, and I have some interest in Brexit, being the firm's chair of our Brexit task force, which was established back in 2016 following the vote, really to advise our executive on risks to the firm, as well as ensuring that we provided the very best updated advice to clients. So throughout that time, we have run our Brexit hub on our website, and all of us involved were very, very happy to see the announcement of the FTA come through on Christmas Eve, so that we were able to spend Christmas Eve on our website updating it for clients. So we managed to get the whole thing updated. We managed to email all of our clients in the UK and provide various comments to the press on the day, which was quite a monumental task. Since then, we've then updated the website again following the 1st of January to ensure that the advice is there, is fully up to date for everybody. Interesting times indeed. We're seeing a lot of clients going through a lot of teething problems with the new border. And of course, we were all expecting there to be a border as soon as we decided to leave the customs union and the single market. And companies are still coming to terms with the paperwork and complications of having to move significant volumes of goods across that border.
Great, thank you, Stuart. We'll start with encourage you to put your questions in the chat function boxes, and I should put those directly to the panel. But we'll start with a general question, and we'll start with you, Linda. The question is that if you had to theme some of the questions or queries that you're getting from your clients, what are some of those queries and questions that you're fielding on a sort of day-to-day, week-to-week basis, and what sort of advice are you giving them?
I think that there are three areas that are coming through really, really strongly. One is about understanding the rules of origin, which suddenly have become really, really important for companies that wish to continue to trade with Europe on tariff-free terms. The second thing is about Incoterms. So a whole raft of companies that have never heard of Incoterms suddenly are faced with some of the options that are available to them. And the third thing, of course, is customs declarations. Who's going to do them for them? Have they thought about them? And I think the main underlying message is that government's messages during the previous year in 2020 have not necessarily been ignored, but certainly have not been at top of anybody's agenda when they're dealing with COVID. So I think, it's been a rude awakening for many companies.
Okay, got some nice questions coming in already. Thank you, Linda. I'd like go into a little bit more detail on those three. Before we do so, Ziggy, what are some of the equivalents that you're receiving? You're on mute, Ziggy.
Since Brexit date, what we're receiving is what we've noticed is a slightly noticeable delay in processing of applications especially for sponsor license applications by UK employers who need that pre-approval in order to recruit from the EU. So we've just been 3 weeks, and already it appears that there is a lengthy processing time. And this is despite most businesses being in lockdown, and recruitment is generally down from the normal numbers. So the indicator is that there is going to be a large number of applications being made, and processing time will then be even longer. So planning in advance will be really something most businesses need to take into account whenever they think they're going to recruit from abroad.
So that's a really important point, isn't it? Especially for the if we hone in on the hotel and catering businesses, for example.
Yeah.
What would you suggest as a typical, when should we start be thinking about applying?
Well, the thing is, the delay currently is in the pre-approval that employers need to have that status, so that when they need to actually recruit, they already have that license. So the best thing to do is to apply for that license without delay. And one new change that's introduced in the latest changes is that businesses no longer need to have a person in mind that they want to recruit when they apply for a sponsor license. So it's possible to just go and apply for the license just in case it's needed in the future. And then that license will stay valid for 4 years, during which time, any number of EU nationals or any non-UK individuals can be sponsored using that license. So I think that is a step worth thinking about if there's any potential of recruiting from abroad.
That's very good. Thank you, Ziggy. Can you put a link, if it's possible, put a link in the chat for people to find out a little bit more about that application process?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. This is a question that's come in from Caroline. It's about exporting goods. Freight seems to be blocked on a large scale. Freight forwarders seem to be having difficulties getting export declarations. Stuart, is this one that you'd like to pick up?
for Linda, it might be more for Linda, but our clients are seeing this as well. And I think what we're hearing, and Linda may correct me on this, it's just simply due to volumes, a lot of this, but systems weren't quite ready because everything was announced so late. People just haven't got up to speed quickly enough with their systems, and this is what's causing a lot of the backlogs. I don't know, Linda, whether you want to comment on that.
Yeah, it started emerging, I think, just about 2 weeks ago, and there was a list circulated by one of the freight forwarders that had this long list of prohibited items, which sort of raised the eyebrows a bit. And I thought, well, they're not regulated for entry into the EU, so why are they prohibited? And then there was a plethora of other freight forwarders who were just sort of pulling up the drawbridge and saying, hang on a minute here, you know, there's such a lot of documentation needed that isn't necessarily being provided in the right format. So it's sort of holding up customs. And so they were getting blocked. And it sort of goes back to what I said before about companies not necessarily being prepared enough or understanding that customs declarations have to be made either by themselves or by the freight forwarder or another third-party organisation such as the Chambers of Commerce. So I think it was a huge awakening for British industry, but equally so that freight forwarders bore the brunt of it, and I'm sure things will get better. I mean, every other training organisation that I know in international trade is working flat out. We're all doing 12, 15-hour days at this moment, trying to reverse the trend of, you know, not having transport to and from the EU. On the Ro-Ro ferries and everything else. So I think it will get better, but there has been considerable teething problems. And as I said, the freight forwarders just sort of put their hands up and said, stop, we need to, you know, manage this effectively.
So Caroline, I don't know whether that, would you like to speak directly to the panel on your question?
Hi there, everyone. Thank you for that. Yes, I think, I mean, we export globally and have done for years, so we were quite prepared in knowing commodity codes, etc., etc. I think we've been a little bit surprised how unprepared some freight forwarders are, because whilst we may use them, for example, UPS into Europe, UPS clearly, you know, move goods around the world. So I'm a little bit surprised that they seem to be so struggling to get goods out. We've taken quite a slow approach. We're double checking with our customers, Incoterms, getting their agreements, the ORI numbers before we ship. So we've not tried to push through anywhere near the volume of trade that we would. But the handful of items and pallets we've attempted to send have not left the country. And it's being a significant issue for us. Yesterday, through one of our pallet companies, I tried to send some goods and I was told my commodity codes were incorrect. I sent them a screenshot of the government website with my correct commodity codes on them. And it's just so frustrating. Some stuff I appreciate. We're all learning the new way of sending it through. We tried to get a lorry load of goods out of the country into France, and apparently border control wanted a T1 transit document, but the lorry was only going to France. It wasn't transiting anywhere. That was an argument that took a day for our carriers to sort out. So it seems all the way along the lines, people aren't quite sure what's going on, and it's just causing a lot of delays. So that's, yeah, it's affecting us quite a lot at the moment because we're not confident to send more goods.
May I come back on that, Rob? Caroline, what I would say is that it's not just the freight forwarders who have been hit by companies who have never exported before. So, you know, unfortunately, the ones who know how to do it sometimes get caught in that backlog of things, which is, I guess, where your company is placed. But there is also this huge, I mean, I love the fact that international trade is on everybody's lips right now. And I love the fact, you know, that this science is being talked about and you know, but HMRC Customs have had to recruit hundreds of new people. And we are seeing examples coming to us of where customs are making the wrong decisions, very much like you're saying about that commodity code and everything. So again, it's about bringing them up to speed, as it is bringing our British companies up to speed and the freight forwarders to speed. That doesn't give you any reassurance, I'm afraid. I think it is something that we just have to work through, and it's a really good example. So thank you for sharing that, Caroline, that you have sent them the copy of the information that you needed. And that's really, really important for everybody who is setting out on exporting international trade, is to keep a file of information that relates to your commodity codes, to your tariffs, any of your transactions. It's really, really important. So the fact that you could do that, Caroline, really stands you in good stead. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Caroline, I suppose that the next, what's the way forward for Caroline, Linda, Stuart? What is she just carrying on doing the same things, waiting for things to improve, or is there anything else that she could do to sort of shortcut that process?
Well, I would like to say, Caroline, it sounds as if you know what you're doing. Do you hold AE or AEO status?
Unfortunately not.
Okay.
We're not that big.
Okay, well, if you know what you're doing, it's worth considering. And for everybody else, approved exporter or authorised economic operator, both of which will be governed by the UK government now, gives you it's not problem free, but it does allow your things so that customs know what you're talking about. So you pass this, you know, this criteria for these authorizations, which gives you a competitive advantage, but it also smooths some of the processes along the way. So I would say perhaps consider one of those. In the meantime, we haven't got a magic wand to make these things go away. We can just hope that they're going to be better as we move forward.
I think I would just add that we are seeing these sorts of issues on both sides of the channel. Everybody is learning. We've also, you know, in the grip of a global pandemic, and so we've got revenue authorities or tax authorities that are working from home, and so therefore their capacity to deal with paperwork and applications is reduced significantly. We saw last week that the Dutch tax authorities shut their doors on VAT registration applications, and it was simply because they were trying to deal with the backlog. They were receiving so many from UK traders, because the Netherlands is a much easier regime for VAT registrations and having fiscal representation, that everybody was funneling their clients towards the Netherlands for EU VAT registrations, and they just couldn't cope with the volume. So I think there's an awful lot of teething issues out there that unfortunately people are getting currently caught up in, but they will resolve themselves over time.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Linda. We've got another question that comes in, just come in from Peter. But before we go to that question, Charlotte, that's the same general question to you. What's the general level of type of inquiries you're getting, support you're providing to your clients?
Well, so unsurprisingly, it's about stability of workforce, and actually with the pandemic as well, most of the questions relate to tax and immigration status issues, because a lot of EU nationals have gone back to their countries of origin to be close to their families, but are working perfectly well from mainland Europe. So there are potential tax implications for that. And there's even with recruitment, because everybody is based at home, it kind of doesn't matter where they are based, in which country, and that too is creating some complexity. But it's more of a pandemic issue than a Brexit issue, but Brexit is impacting that stability and the questions around how you treat people for tax purposes and whether they're resident in the UK, and whether or not people need to have an establishment in another country in order to employ people going forwards. So not pure employment issues. We're also, though, seeing quite a lot of transactional work, so an increase in corporate acquisitions, which I don't think anybody expected. And there's investment as well. So that, with the background of Brexit and the pandemic, is really positive.
It's encouraging.
Can I add something to Charlotte's comments there? We are also seeing issues with people that are stuck due to lockdown in different countries, then continuing to work overseas and actually creating some quite significant tax, social security issues, as well as not having necessarily the right permits in order to work in some countries. We actually heard of somebody being arrested in France working from their gîte because they didn't have the appropriate work permits. So people have got to be very careful that they can't just sit in their holiday flat somewhere because they got locked down and continue working without doing all of the right compliance they need to do. Making sure they've got their, is it, Charlotte, you'll correct me, is it the A1 social security certificate that you need to get to enable you to be able to stay within your home social security system? You need to check locally whether you need to make any tax registration. So we've got a client who is stuck in Slovenia at the moment, and we've now been told that within 15 days of him first receiving any salary whilst he's out there, he has to file a tax return locally. So there are some significant issues with sitting around in somebody else's country working. So you need to get advice if this is going to happen to you. Definitely,
I would advise people to go and get local advice if they are abroad. I've certainly dealt with somebody in Portugal, and the UK and Portugal have a COVID-related agreement around tax and social security. So it's always worth checking locally what the arrangements are, because they're changing, I think, constantly, just to try and adapt to what's going on. Because we have got people who are stuck in different countries and others who have just made a choice to stay where they are close to their families. Others have stayed in the UK, so it works both ways.
Thanks, Charlotte. Thank you, Stuart. Will you put a link on the chat for a place where people can find out more information about what you've just been talking about there? That would be great. I'm going to come back to Peter Taylor from Paris Smith. Peter, please address the panel with your question, if comfortable. Otherwise, I'll put it for you.
Well, the one I put in the chat was more an observation rather than a question, Rob. It's as a law firm, with very much like Charlotte, we're seeing, and Stuart, seeing a lot of clients who are trading overseas. Some of them are very experienced in exporting, but hitting issues, and I'm sure they will be temporary, around the logistics problems. I've seen pictures of Ashford, where there are a whole host of drivers sitting waiting for their documentation to be approved so they can get clearance to go to Dover and jump on a ferry, but then they're hitting tachograph hours issues. One client in particular looking to deliver product into Germany, got a contract with a German customer who is now invoking penalty clauses for late delivery. The haulier is charging additional fees because the drivers are on the road for that much longer. So the process is becoming clunky at the moment, but I'm sure, I'm a glass half full person, that things will be better. But yeah, I'm sure I'm not the only one who's hearing these stories, and others on the panel will have heard them as well.
Thank you, Peter. I know Stuart or the panel want to come back on Peter with that.
No, I'd agree. We're all seeing those sorts of issues, and again, I think it's teething problems more than a permanent issue.
Agreed.
Okay, we had some pre-registration questions, and I'm going to turn to those now. I'm going to work our way through them, unless we get some questions in the chat. And one of the themes of the pre-registration.
Sorry, Rob, can I just there is a point in the chat that I just like to just correct, and Linda may sort of help me on this one, that Councillor Dermot Smith has raised, saying that pre-Brexit companies were exporters. They weren't technically exporters because they weren't crossing a customs border. That is the difference. That's what people have got to understand, that when we decided to leave the customs union and the single market, we were then exporting across a customs border. That is the difference. Before, we weren't exporting because we were moving goods within a single market. We may have moved them across a piece of water, but we weren't actually exporting. So unfortunately, Councillor Smith, your comment isn't actually technically correct, because we have become exporters now that we have left the single market.
Councillor, if you want to unmute yourself, please, and respond as you like. If not, we'll...
Yeah. Hello?
Yes, please go ahead, Dermot.
Well, that's complete nitpicking, I'm sorry. Companies that sold products between the UK and Germany or France or Italy will have already considered themselves exporters. Whether they were actually crossing a trade barrier is a technical aspect that they are now getting to grips with and do have to get to grips with. My company, I'm not on here as a councillor, I'm here, as a business owner. We've exported worldwide for 20 years, and we consider selling products, as a company from the UK, selling products to Germany or France or Italy as much of an export as it is to the US or Australia. Yes, there are trade issues to overcome now. What we're asking companies to become now is export procedure experts. That's the difference. They were already exporters. They were shipping exports. They just weren't carrying out export procedures, technical export procedures. That's the difference.
May I come in there, please? So, thank you, Dermot. If I may use your name, as this is on a personal account. I think that Stuart Lyle is absolutely right. And I think that you, as a company that has exported around the rest of the world, would have recognised that it was considerably easier to send your goods to the EU rather than to provide a lot of documentation for going to the US, for example. Now, the thing is that companies that are having the main problems with exporting to Europe are ones who have never exported to the rest of the world. So that is, yeah, this is the big hurdle for them. So I think that what has happened with the will of the British people to have our sovereignty back has caused these rest of the world procedures to be implemented with Europe, altogether with some concessions on tariffs and quotas and those sorts of things. So I think that it is a big shock for some companies, and they may well have considered themselves exporters before, but now
exactly. That is the point. Sorry, there's a lot of echo. Trying to explain to companies that you weren't an exporter before, now you are, is anathema to them, because they believe, whatever the realities in terms of export procedures, they believed they were exporting. And the communications that, oh, you weren't an exporter before, is upsetting to them. I have a friend who has a company and they sell through Amazon in Germany and Italy and Spain and France, and they can't do that anymore. And he being told that he was never an exporter is quite insulting to him personally. The way the communications should have been is that although you export to the EU now, you will have to carry out new procedures, and the communications were poor. They were all about looking outside of the UK and looking worldwide, when it should have been, more targeted than that. That's all I'm saying.
I think, Dermot, there is something about a publicity campaign, such as the government have been doing, is that a lot of people don't take any notice of it. I think the circumstances of COVID has meant that people's focus has been on different things. So we are where we are. I think it's a semantics exercise between whether you're an exporter or not. But we've got to where we are, and this is what people have to do. I think you are well blessed in the fact that you know it's familiar to you about customs declarations and the tariff codes and origin, all of that good stuff that our companies are having to learn now. So thank you for your comment anyway. I hope, you know, by talking about this to everybody else, it's given some clarity.
Indeed, yes, thank you, Dermot.
Thank you, Linda, Dermot, Stuart. I think we can all agree that there has been some changes which we're trying to get to grips with. I'd like to return to a point that you made, Linda, right at the beginning, and giving us a little bit of a masterclass on the rules of origin, something I personally struggle with. Would you be able to share some insight on the rules of origin as it relates to
I shall try and give you some of this in a basic form rather than in the lots of pages in the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. But basically with rules of origin, to get tariff-free access to Europe, there are two ways to do that. One is there are things you could send to Europe as zero tariff anyway. But the other version is that you provide a rules of origin certificate that shows that your goods have been entirely created from goods within the UK, whether that's via components or whether you've brought them all together, or substantially changed from the components you bring in. And for each tariff number, when you can check with the government, you have a different amount of non-originating materials that is allowed. So for most of them, it's around 50%, but you can have non-originating materials. So for instance, if you've got something in China and you put it into a box, your new widget, it depends on the tariff number, of course, but you can still claim it is of British origin. And it's really, really important. Now, you can make a declaration if the transaction is under, I believe, £5,700, you can make your own declaration on your commercial invoice. You can do that. For transactions higher than that, you may need to get authentication of that. So look at the rules, talk to the experts, talk to DIT, talk to a company like ours. We can help with rules of origin. But if you want to send your goods to Europe and you want to claim zero tariffs and the rules of origin are in place, then speak to an expert, but that's what you can do. Chambers of Commerce are really, really good at this, offering advice.
Dave Austin, would you like to address Linda? Does that help? Dave, did you want to speak?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. One question. When we read the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, it was very complicated. And there was a thing about preferential, I'm just reading it now, UK, EU preferential rules of origin. How is that any different to what you've been talking about, Linda?
You're on mute, Linda.
Beg your pardon. No, Dave, it is the preference you get because your goods meet the relevant rules of origin that are in place. But that depends on your tariff code. So please check the UK tariff to check what the non-originating materials percentage can be allowed in those goods. But it's all the same thing.
And sorry, just to follow up, I mean, yes, we have a lot of suppliers from within the EU where we buy their goods, bring them into the UK, either we do or they do to their UK company, and then we would then ship them back. Now, if they're made in the EU, we get what? We say that yes, they're made in the EU, and therefore we'd be able to sell them tariff-free. Would that be a fair comment?
Generally,
it's a problem.
It is a problem, Stuart. Yes, and there is much discourse about this right at this moment. You may have seen something about Marks and Spencer's Peppa Pigs or something.
Percy Pigs.
Percy Pigs. Thank you, Stuart. About the Percy Pigs, and that people are talking about this. There is something about, and it's just coming through. So forgive me, I can't give any more details on this, Dave. But there is something about returned goods, which people are investigating at the moment. Have you heard anything about that, Stuart?
I have, yes. The issue is, Dave, is that if goods leave the EU, then they lose their origin, the EU origin, automatically under EU duty law. So if you then take them back into the EU, and this is happening, you might have seen some stories in the press about some of the Irish supermarkets struggling to fill their shelves. And it's particularly an issue with Ireland because goods often pass through the UK, going between Ireland and the rest of the EU. And so, for example, Lidl's in Ireland, they have all of their fruit from Spain. There's tomatoes from Spain delivered into a warehouse in the UK. It's then repackaged and distributed out to the UK and to Southern and to Ireland. Because that leaves the EU and goes back in again, it loses its EU origin, and so therefore it's subject to duty. And because it's not UK origin, it's therefore outside of the tariff-free trade. So it is a significant issue, and we don't know at the moment whether it's a misdrafting of the free trade agreement, because they cut and pasted another free trade agreement together and didn't think about the amount of goods that pass backwards and forwards during their life. We don't know, but at the moment it is an issue.
Dave?
Thank you. Can I, just to follow on from that, I'm really sorry I'm going on. If we were going to do an export, then if we had, let's say, a consignment that half of it we could say had EU or UK rules of origin and the other half wouldn't, would it be a smarter thing to do to split that into two different consignments, or ship it on one and sort of divide up, here, this lot we've got certificate of origin, and this lot is all from America? You know what I mean? What would be?
Yeah, Dave, can I just ask, your goods, are you simply importing and exporting goods, or are you actually doing something with them in the UK?
We import and export. We don't transform.
Okay. The EU piece, the goods that are coming out of the EU and back in again, if you can prove to the rule is something along these lines. If you can prove to a customs officer that they haven't been significantly altered whilst outside of the EU, then they can go back in tariff free.
Brilliant.
So you're probably going to be best off, and it's going to probably be a right fag, but you're probably going to be best off to actually separate out your consignments. Otherwise, the ones that will pass the easiest will get caught up with the ones that won't. Don't know if you'd agree with that, Linda.
Yes, I would. Keep it separate, I would say. And the other thing that I would add to that, perhaps, is have you checked that you can? Sometimes there is no need for a certificate of origin for goods. It depends on your tariff, your commodity code, HS code, whatever you call it, because a lot of items can be brought in duty-free anyway. So don't go for a rule of origin, a certificate of origin, if you don't need one. Just check. I would just add that to the point.
That's a very good point, Linda. Thank you, Stuart. Dave, does that any more queries from you? It's brilliant that we've been able to help.
No, that is brilliant. Thank you very much.
No, thank
pleasure.
you for asking. Stuart and Linda, please put some links for Dave and others in the chat for some ongoing reading and reference, if you don't mind. That would be great. Stu, I'm going to stick with you because some of the questions relating to VAT and also some questions related to. I was reading an article over the weekend in a Sunday paper that was talking about the role of couriers applying Brexit charges, deferment account charges, disbursement charges, in addition to variable rates of VAT, depending on which EU country you're sending goods to. That's quite a lot to get your teeth into, but do your best.
Thank you. And I'm not a VAT partner either, so I will do my best. All the VAT issues come out from the fact that in order to let me get my head around this. So when you have to import goods into a country to supply them, and to do that you have to either be established in that country or have a fiscal representation in that country to enable you to be an importer and supply those goods. In the pre-Brexit days, if we talk about, let's talk business to consumer. In the pre-Brexit days, if you were sending goods to a customer in the EU, you could charge them UK VAT up to the point that you exceeded the registration thresholds in that EU country where your customers were. Once you'd exceeded the VAT threshold, you then have to register for VAT in that country. It's called the distance selling rules. Now that we are outside of Europe, we don't have the benefit of being able to consider the registration thresholds. So in order to import and sell our goods in the EU, we either have to, as I say, have a establishment there, or we have to employ the services of a fiscal representative. And over in Europe, there is a industry of these people that will help you to import and deliver goods in the EU. They're not cheap because they take joint and several liability for your VAT and customs liabilities. So they do charge you for doing this, as you'd expect them to, because they take on a liability. It's the same thing for importing into the UK now. To be an importer into the UK, you have to be established here or have a fiscal representative. Now, these rules have always been in place, and Linda will probably add to this. But they just weren't. We just didn't follow them particularly well. But now with Brexit, we are following them. This is where you've seen stories about, is it Brooks, the bicycle manufacturer in Holland, not selling to UK customers anymore, and some slipper manufacturer in Scandinavia somewhere they picked up on. And this is because of the need to have some sort of fiscal representation in the UK. The BBC got it completely wrong, saying it was all to do with sort of one-sided attempt by the government to increase red tape, but it wasn't. It's just the way international VAT works. So I think we'll find that there'll be some new business opportunities in the UK to provide fiscal representation as people do in the EU. So there is hope on the horizon. There's a new mini one-stop shop that should have been implemented in the EU on the 1st of January, which enabled British businesses to have one registration which covered all EU countries. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, that got delayed in Europe until July. But when that comes in, UK companies will be able to register once in Europe and then return all of their VAT in one return. Currently, yes, they're having to run around and register with lots of EU countries and deal with VAT registrations in those different countries. If you're trading B2B, your Incoterms will help, but you'll be finding that a lot of customers won't want to change their Incoterms particularly. They won't want to have to deal with being the exporter from the UK and the importer into the EU. They prefer you to do it for them. So it is causing some issues, but unfortunately, yes, we are having to look at VAT registrations in multiple countries across Europe.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. We've got a couple of great questions coming in. One from Paige. Would you like to address that to Ziggy? I suspect. Oh no, probably to Linda. Paige, from Paige Atkinson. Happy to ask the question. If not, I'll ask it for you. Is a rule of origin certificate the same as a UK certificate of origin from the Chamber of Commerce? If you'd like to field that one. Linda, we're having difficulty hearing you. Your microphone.
Okay, sorry, I moved my microphone to the side. Is that all right now?
Perfect, yeah.
Good. Yes, you can get your certificate of origin for your goods from the Chamber of Commerce. It is a UK issued document now.
Brilliant. Thank you, Linda. Rachel, you've got a great question. Would you like to address that probably to Ziggy? Rachel Warburton, would you like to address the panel?
Hi there. Yeah, it was just going back to staff being, well, say staff, but obviously we have a French national who works for us. She has a French passport, but she does have settled status in the UK, but she's currently living in, well, not living in France, but she went back to France in December and is staying there at the moment until she can come back safely. So just wondered if that is okay, if there's anything that we need to consider with that situation.
As far as immigration law is concerned, that's fine, because once an EU national has got settled status, they will only lose it if they've been away for 5 years or more. So immigration-wise, that's okay. But that brings us back to what Charlotte was mentioning earlier about payroll issues, tax issues. That might be questions you need to think about.
Charlotte?
Yeah, I was just going to say, France, we know, is one of the countries who, what do you call it, punish employees for working for another country whilst living in France. They make it quite challenging, and therefore you will need to check locally what that person should be doing to ensure that they are paying the correct tax. And whether or not, I don't know whether France has a COVID-related tax agreement with the UK, and that is best found out through local accountants, and possibly that employee just going and checking with a labour lawyer in France that they are entitled to work, because I think there are certain permits, as Stuart mentioned, that are required in order to work. You can't just simply say, I'm stuck here and therefore I'm going to work from my living room.
Okay, thank you.
Does that help, Rachel?
Yeah, no, that does help. Thank you.
No.
Rachel, just one other question is just from a corporate perspective, just you need to think about what people are doing for you in these countries. If you've got somebody sitting in another country operating on your behalf, there is a risk that you could create a corporate tax presence for the company as well. Not just a personal tax or personal permit issue for the individual. So again, you need to take some advice on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. We've got a great question that came in. We've been very EU-centric, of course, given the title of this session, but what about outside of the EU? This is a question that came in from Constantinia. Would you like to address the panel with it?
Yes, hi, good morning.
Morning.
We've been working for a number of years now with both EU countries, and the last 2 or 3 years focusing a lot on other countries outside EU. We saw some opportunities. So we are aware that due to Brexit, UK has had to make a lot of changes, as we see the issues in the border that we've been discussing all this time. So we are wondering, we're about to send some goods now in South Africa or India or Australia. Since we were trading other EU common regulations, has something changed from the 1st of January for our trading terms and conditions when it comes to countries outside EU? Are we expecting again delays due to similar reasons, lack of clarity or anything else?
Linda, is that one for you?
Yeah, thank you very much. Hi, Constantia. Delays, maybe. I think that probably not. There should be no changes. The only changes that, I mean, there is shifts all of the time through the World Trade Organization, but also through our country having trade agreements with another whole raft of countries. I think it's over 50 at the moment, all of which will have their separate agreements and which are not interchangeable. So you can't have a free trade agreement, for instance, with Turkey. We've just signed one, and use the benefits of that to enter the EU market. So they're all separate and individual. But check those free trade agreements to see if there are any benefits to you. I think possibly if you're sending things by road, which I guess you wouldn't be if you're going to those far markets, I think you've probably got a better chance of them going out on time right now. So I don't see really that there would be a cause for much delay apart from resource capacity at those ports.
Okay, so nothing is reported about any worrying delay. Okay, no, we are quite familiar with HS codes like the rest and Incoterms. A lot of the customers are also helping out when it comes to that. But yes, thank you very much. So nothing immediate to worry about, at least there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Constantine. Let's move on to, we've had a dominated discussion with goods. We've got some questions on services, and this one that came in on the pre-registration. How will Brexit impact us as a consultancy firm that does not hold any recognized qualifications but provide services to EU customers? Who'd like to pick this one up? Is that another one for you, Linda or Stuart? Linda, your microphone.
Stuart, would you like to take that? I can just sort of give a brief outline that these are still being looked at, and I believe there's one of these 6 months let's sort it out with the professional agreements.
There certainly is for financial services. I think it all comes with services. It all depends on the mode of delivery for those services, and there's different sorts of modes. So if you deliver your advice remotely, so over the internet, by phone, by email, that's known as mode 1. If you provide services to an overseas customer because they've come into your home country, that's mode 2. If you supply via a locally established enterprise, so if you've got an office in the EU, that's mode 3, or temporary presence, and I see there's another question about this, is mode 4. So it all depends on how you deliver your service as to how you're going to be affected. If you're providing advisory services remotely to your clients, then you shouldn't be affected. Your provision will be outside scope for VAT. You shouldn't have an issue. If you are actually going into the your people are going to your customers in the EU, then you will have to look at each individual state's regulations with regards to the provision of services, determine how you do that. It's not a blanket EU rule. You have to look at each individual member state's rules in relation to that.
There is something I'd like to add, and it's that legislation of professional qualifications, and Charlotte might want to add this, is that the bodies, so the legal bodies, will be looking at how that works out for them. But there is something in the sting in the tail, is that to go to and operate in Europe as a British citizen working there, you can only ever be there for 90 days in any 180. So I think there is work to be done on this, and Stuart's absolutely right. Financial services are still in fact, there's talk about the financial services being a no deal because the details of that still has to come out. But with regards to professional recognition, it is the industry bodies that have the final say on this. Is that right, Charlotte?
To be honest, it's not something I've looked at in a great amount of detail, but that sounds right. And as Stuart says, you would have to consider each state individually, which is where the slight challenge comes from an HR perspective, because before you send anybody anywhere or do anything, you're going to have to check all of those requirements in each member state.
Yeah, Linda, what I've seen is mutual recognition is going to come down to the various institutes in each of the countries, and certainly from our perspective, just to put some colour around it, we are currently applying to be third country auditors in 5 different EU states where we provide audit services. I mean, generally we use our colleagues that are already based in country, but we're signing audit reports in 5 different EU countries and have to register in each one. So it is just more red tape, I'm afraid.
So there was a question on pre-registration, which is very specific. I don't know whether the person that wrote it is on the call, but it was about supplying copywriting and communications advice services to European companies. If you are that person, please address the panel, otherwise I'll ask the question for you on your behalf. So the question probably goes to Linda, I would think. Quote, most of what I've heard relates to product import and export. I supply copywriting and communications advice services to European companies. Apart from getting EORI numbers, GDPR arrangements, and checking VAT changes, what else do I need to consider when invoicing?
Oh, thank you.
Quite a lot in there, Linda.
So, right, EORI, else? I don't know if I can answer this one. Can you ask me the question again?
Yeah, of course. So it's about supplying copywriting and communication advice to the EU. And apart from the EORI number, the GDPR arrangements and VAT changes, is there anything else they need to be considering when invoicing?
I'm not sure that they do, but what I would say that out of those 3 things, and I'm sure they know their business very, very well, but this is a point perhaps for everybody else, that GDPR is really, really important. And especially if you are exchanging personal information between EU and UK. So at the moment, you all have GDPR with UK. You may need to register with the EU, and there is still an outstanding question about the adequacy, about whether EU thinks that we have adequate systems for their purposes. So I'm not sure. Can I take that an advisement and perhaps go back to whoever it was that asked? I'd like to do a little bit more checking on that.
I put it in the chat for us. Anyone else from the panel, please chip in.
I'll just add to that. As I understand it, there's a 6-month agreed equivalence for GDPR, and that is going to be updated, as far as I understand. Rob, if you, so whoever did this, if they go on to our Brexit Hub, there is a section there on data that our data experts put on, so that may be able to help them.
Great, that's very good. Thank you, Stuart. I'm working my way through the pre-registration questions. There's been a few questions on preferential statements on invoices for approved exporters. There's no sort of context for that, but could you provide a little bit of background, Linda, talk to that particular statement, preferential statement on invoices for approved exporters? Linda, your microphone, I think, is playing up.
Right, I have it here. Can you hear me now?
A little bit better, yeah.
Okay, I do apologise to everybody. My computer doesn't like Zoom at all. So yes, we've already dealt with that, Rob. We were
Okay.
talking about preference and rules of origin.
Okay. Whoever, if you did ask that question pre-registration, then you're more than welcome to address the panel now, if you want to. If not, we shall go to our next question. So I imagine that we've probably covered quite a lot of these questions in the session so far, but I'll ask this one. We have sporadic shipments from an EU supplier. What procedures should we put in place for a smooth import from Jan 21? Sporadic shipments from an EU supplier. What procedures should we put in place for a smooth import? Linda, your microphone is.
So we need clear processes for imports and exports. I've already mentioned an export file. You should be understanding EORI. You should be understanding preference, your rules of origin. You should be understanding your customs declarations requirements. There is a load of help out there if any company needs any help. There is training through the chambers, accredited chambers. There is the DIT, and there are independents like us. But setting up an export process is really fundamental to making sure that you monitor and you control your shipments or receipts.
Okay, thank you, Linda. David Hannum, you've got a question. Please address the panel with it.
I just want to ask, when you're doing the rules of origin calculation, what's the bottom part of the calculation? So is it the sale price that you're shipping into Europe, or is it the cumulative value of your input? So there's the profits, the UK profit. So we import stuff, but it's a very small part of the total value. Most of we add on, our profit margin's fairly large because it's the technology we're putting in. Therefore, we would always assume that our goods are UK because they're substantially processed in the UK, and as compared to the sale price, the inputs are very, very small.
What the bottom line is the X works costed price. So yes, what you would sell it for at your door according to your costed bill of materials. So that's the figure that you use.
Sorry, I missed that. It's the X works price.
Yes, the X works price.
That's fine. So yes, it does include the profit.
I believe
at the point you X works it, so not yes, the profit on anything else, but that's within the units that you're making.
Yes.
Thank you.
Does that help, David?
Yes, very much so.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, we've got a question that came in about European visas. Paige Aitchison, if you'd like to address the panel, then please do so. Otherwise, I'll ask the question for you. So it's on the general chat. It's about visas will be needed for engineers traveling to European countries pre-COVID, sending engineers to Germany to install commissioning systems. What are the requirements now Brexit has taken place? So sending engineers to Germany. Who'd like to pick this one up?
Just very quickly, I say, unfortunately, there's no short answer to it or shortcut to this, and they'll need to have a look at the German regulations. It's as simple as that. It's not a EU question. It's a member state question. So they will have to get advice in Germany as to what they can do.
Best place to get that advice? Is there a
if I can just say, this is clearly, as Stuart said, each country within the EU will have its own rules and immigration rules. So whether it qualifies for a short visit or an activity that can be done during a short visit will depend on Germany's laws, whether they would need a work visa or something that can be done as a visitor. So I agree that they need to get an advice from a German lawyer who specializes in that area.
Thank you, Ziggy. Thank you for clarification. Thank you, Stuart. We've got a question again from Dave Austin. Dave, did you want to speak to the panel?
Yeah, sorry. We do an awful lot of our selling, you know, to outside of the UK over our website. A lot of it is to individuals, but we get a lot of companies that come on. Now, we're having a debate internally about what information we need to ask when we take the order, in order that, you know, we don't have to go back to them. And EORI number would seem to be something that we should be asking people. Would that be correct?
Linda?
Hello again, Dave. So
Hi.
you're selling, can you hear me okay? Good. Thanks, Stuart. So you're selling online, did you say, Dave? And that is both to business to consumers and business to business.
Yeah.
Okay, and you're talking about now business to business in particular with the EORI number?
I guess, yeah. But also any other information when they're filling in that checkout on our website, is there anything else we should try and get off them to make life easier for everyone?
Okay, well, usually if you make it easier for your customer, you make it harder for yourself in relationship to sales. What I would say that it's really, really important for you to understand the costing differences that Incoterms affect your selling price. I think it's really, really good for you to understand those, but also to understand what quotations you might want to offer and the things that that are on a quotation that are really, really important to give your customers the impression that you are an absolutely fabulous company, but that you're asking the right questions. We've got something that I've developed on a customer's quotation, on a overseas quotation, that might help you define what you need to ask and what you're prepared to offer. And that goes back to the Incoterms. How much are you going to absorb into your cost, which may make you uncompetitive? But we can have a conversation separately about that if you wish, and I'll put my details on the chat.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Great. Stuart, did you want to come in?
Just the other point, Dave, is this whole point about being an importer, because you'll be supplying goods in the UK, in the EU, depending on your Incoterms. So you just need to check that out, that you don't need to register for VAT and have fiscal representation in a European country to enable you to do this.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, guys and girls.
Okay.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you for your questions. We're coming to the last 10 minutes of the session. If there's a question that we haven't answered, then please, open your mics up and speak directly to the panel. We've gone through the pre-registration questions. Any more questions before I ask the panel for a final summary? If that's the case, then Charlotte, would you mind giving us a bit of a summary of what our guests should be thinking about in relation to the topic this morning from your specialist perspective?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it is just getting on top of having to think about each member state separately and what you need to do in order for your employees, to stabilise your workforce, and taking immigration advice in that member state, also tax advice. I think those are the two biggest issues really at the moment, making sure you've got the right permits. As Stuart said, you don't want any of your employees being arrested for doing something that they shouldn't have been doing. And just having that mindset of there is additional work that needs to be done before you can operate in these countries that we've been operating in, quite happily, in the free movement of people. It's just a new way of thinking.
Thank you, Charlotte. And Ziggy, same question to you.
I think it's more or less the same for me. It's just to think about planning in advance whenever there's new recruitment, just in case, that person is not a UK national, then there's a lot more timeline involved in the recruitment process. And also if your business is the type that is likely to be recruiting from the outside the UK, it's worth thinking about having a license and have it ready, because it can be a time saver for much later. The other thing is also there's cost implications when recruiting, whereas previously, any business can employ from within the EU without incurring any additional costs. This application process for work visas are quite costly. So that's another thing worth bearing in mind when budgeting. Basically, that's it really, to think of immigration as a possible scenario that you would be coming across. That's it for me.
Fantastic. Thank you, Siggy. Linda.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Rob. I think I go back to those three things that I think are really, really important at the start, which is, having a look at the rules of origin, about understanding Incoterms and how that affects what you do, where you do, and what you pay for, and customs declarations. I think all of them are really important. There are a load of courses out there, some free, some paid for, and the chambers are a really good source of advice, as is the Institute of Export, if you want to get some qualifications in these things. What I would say to the companies that are here today, that if you have any concerns, there is a service, one that we offer, but not exclusively just us, is to have an export manager come in for 1 day a month, just to make sure that you're doing things right. What we don't want is, in a year or so, is HMRC to be fining companies because they have not been compliant or they've misread the information and those sorts of things. So I think compliance is king. You have to get it right. There is support out there, and please be diligent. We have to have diligence on all things that deal with customs. And therefore, it is a pain right at this moment in time as we learn those things, the science of international trade. But there is help out there, and if anybody wants to contact me after this, that's really, really fine. But your first place of resource is actually your chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. That's very clear. That's good.
Thank you. I think the key thing for people to just bear in mind is that Europe is not a single country. There are some rules around the border, but once you get into Europe, then the complexities increase as you operate across different member states. So it really is about taking the right advice. These things are complicated. The rules, as Linda's been talking about with regards to origin, the getting your import and export declarations right, knowing how you could operate services, whether your people can work, etc., in different locations. There are detailed, complex rules around all of these things, and the best advice I can give to anyone is take advice, and listen to that advice and take time. I was on a webinar just before Christmas. I think one of the most chilling pieces of advice one of the board members, one of the panelists gave was, if you're not ready, don't try and trade with Europe until you are. Be prepared to shut your doors, get everything in place, and then start again, which was very chilling. A lot of us were sort of quite shocked by that advice, but I think actually hearing how some companies aren't ready, it might be very good advice, that just to take that time, take a breath, get all your procedures an understanding in place of what needs to be done, and then go again.
That's very sound advice, Joe. And all of the links will be available in the chat. We'll put together a fact sheet as well, so you can access that. So I'm going to turn to Ross now to formally close the session. Over to you, Ross.
Thanks so much, Rob. The issues of trying to get specific information into the chat. Apologies, I sent a wrong link, but I've corrected it. So if you look back, you'll see the one. Because on the 3rd of February, we're holding an event all around exporting services, which I think will be really interesting. So if you have an interest in that, please come on to that event. There's no doubt that it's an important area. It's probably an undeveloped area because despite the single market and the EU has not specifically or very well developed a uniform approach around services. So there's a lot to learn now we're outside of it, or indeed a bit before. So if you're interested at all in that, please come on to that event. There's no doubt that you all need some support and help during this difficult time. There's no doubt actually that the government needs some help and support in providing the right kind of communications to everybody around this particular time. There's no doubt that customs officials need some training and a greater clarity and understanding around their roles. There's no doubt that chambers of commerce and businesses need to ensure that they are on top of and aware of all of the new intricacies and the changes that have come into play. The truth of all of this, though, is that these exporting procedures, as Dermot quite rightly pointed out, they're not new. These things occur around the globe in terms of exporting trade and activity. It's just that it might be new to your particular business. So in order to help with your needs specifically, we are working with members of the panel and Linda specifically around one-to-one advice, and we're going to be building that program for you. So if you have an interest in sitting in front of somebody for 20 minutes, half an hour, and just go through your very, very specific needs and concerns, getting some very specific clarity on a particular subject, please get in touch with the Chamber of Commerce. That can either be me or Jackie Highmore, who I put her email address on the chat. And we will ensure that we can put you in front of somebody with the right knowledge, the right expertise, and enjoy 20 minutes, half an hour of specific one-to-one advice with some follow through as well. And I think that's really important for you during this very tough time. We've been engaging government a lot over the last couple of years, and we're certainly continuing to do so. I mean, I sent an email with all kinds of experiences and no solutions, but just some particular problems identified to government only last week. And I know that these things are having impact. I know that, as Stuart quite rightly said, we're going through probably an extended teething issues. These things will be resolved, but they're resolved through us all coming together and finding solutions and helping each other with that. So thank you so much for coming on to what I thought was a brilliantly engaged event today. I mean, we could have gone on for several hours more, but as I say, get in touch with the Chamber. We'll put you in touch with some specific solutions. And thank you so much for such a brilliant event. Finally, and most importantly, I'd like to thank Rob for supremely chairing the programme once again, and for the whole panel of experts and specialists today who I think have done a wonderful job. Back to you, Rob.
Thank you, Ross. Thank you for all attending. More events, as Ross has said. Check out the Hampshire Chamber of Commerce website for all of those details. Look out for a fact sheet with all of the links. We'll be sending those to you and also putting a recording up for you to watch back at your leisure. So very best of luck to you. We hope to see you on future Chamber of Solutions. Have a great rest of the week. Yeah, take care.